I think that's our sign to get going. So I will start by saying hello to everybody. And I want to start by thanking M&A Magazine and MK Flynn and especially Kelly Green, who's been amazing setting this all up. And go right into our panel, which is about starting your own business and why this is, we think, an important topic. I'm Beatrice Mitchell. I am the owner and co-founder of something called Sperry Mitchell & Company, which is a mid-market investment banking boutique. And I also own a manufacturing company in the Midwest called Percival Scientific. Before I ask the panelists to speak, I wanted to just quickly talk about some stats that I collect over the years. As we all know, banking and private equity are seriously lagging in terms of representation of women at the senior levels. If we look at consulting firms, they're now 17% women partners. Accounting firms, 27%. Law firms partners are 24%. My data, I have over 1,900 LBO firms in my database and 3,500 senior positions, of which 185, 5.3% are women, and of the 606 partners, and this is just my database, it's not at all inclusive, only 23 are women partners. So this panel, again, is about starting your own business, and I feel very strongly that if you can't, what is the expression? If you can't join them, lick them. So ladies, start your own firms. So with that, I want to turn to my incredibly talented panelists and say how thrilled I am to be with you guys. And ask you just the first question, would you introduce yourselves and say why you started your own firm and also what you do? So Suzanne, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Suzanne Yoon, the founder and managing partner of Kinsey Capital Partners. We are a lower middle market control buyout firm headquartered in Chicago and primarily invest in consumer manufactured products and services businesses throughout the United States that are sub 15 million of EBITDA and under 250 million in revenue. I started my own firm for a lot of reasons. I love what I do. I love working with management teams, and I love the industry, actually. And then I think the most important thing for me was the ability to create my own investment thesis and control my own destiny.
Great. How about Marilyn?
Hi, I'm founder and managing partner of Mizzen Capital, which is a newly licensed SBIC fund. We got licensed in December, and I've been running SBIC funds for 24 years. This will be my 6th SBIC fund, and I usually had done them at larger firms, and I kept seeing less experienced guys go out and launch their own SBIC funds, and truthfully, I was jealous. And I finally just said, if I can't do this, I've been doing this for 24 years, if I can't do this, who can? And really had to push myself to go out there and launch Mizzen with my partner, Liddy Carter. And at the time, I just felt we didn't know sources of capital. So I just felt intimidated about it. But you get out there, you tell your story, and it's really resonated. So we're focused on lower middle market companies, 1 to 10 million of EBITDA. And we're lending first and second lien debt to these companies. About 50% will be PE backed and 50% will be owner managed.
Great, thank you. And Jerry?
Great, hello everyone. I'm the founder in Levante Capital Partners. We're a lower middle market private debt and equity investment firm, primarily focused on sponsored transactions. That's company in the lower middle market, so it's 3 to 20 million EBITDA. Companies all over the U.S. We've just finished raising our 3rd fund, so that will put us over 800 million in total across the 3 funds of AUM. And in terms of why I launched my own fund and with my partners, largely driven by controlling my own destiny, similar to what Suzanne said. We launched in 2009. So, I was part of my last gig, if you will, was running the Western US for Allied Capital. And publicly traded BDC. And when 2008 hit, all the publicly traded firms started, closing offices, shrinking, et cetera. So it was kind of a pivotal time, a real pivot opportunity in my career, and just felt like that was the time to either go, make the decision, start my own firm, which I was encouraged to do by other people, including some LPs as well, or go and do the same thing, work for another big firm, et cetera. So we did it.
What has been the biggest challenge you've faced? And if you were a man, would you answer this question the same way? Suzanne, you want to go first?
Sure. I think the challenges in a lot of ways are the same, and they are different. So, I'm a mother of 3. I maybe sometimes think I have 4 children, including my husband. But, that I think that definitely is a unique factor, and it's particularly as we've gone through COVID. But starting your own firm is you really have to have, an entrepreneurial drive and think a lot bigger, and in some ways be very naive to the challenges of starting your own firm and starting from scratch. It's a lot like jumping off a cliff into like an ocean of water that you haven't seen. So the hardest part, I think, for me was really like taking that jump. And then once you're in, you just start like swimming for your life. But, eventually, if you're a good swimmer, you'll get to the other side. So I think in that sense, the challenges are very similar, to all entrepreneurs, having to build something from scratch. And I think all of us have gone through that. Is different, especially if you've been a deal person your whole life, and now you have to actually run a firm, build operations, and set up your own phone lines, and all the things that were, if you're coming from a larger institution, were really done for you in the past. I think the difference for me is that I am a mother, and a wife, so that in itself makes it very different. And I think during COVID, I've heard this over and over again from female colleagues, but the brunt of childcare and the learning from home and really was borne by the women in the family. And so that even whether I'm the chair and managing partner of Kinsey, I still had to step up quite a bit during that time until we could get childcare back in. I think that was one of the most challenging times in my career, is right when COVID hit, and balancing that.
We can come back to that.
There seems to be some feedback, Beatrice, so I don't know if we should.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you're not talking, just mute yourself. I don't seem to be able to mute myself, but everybody else can mute themselves. So, well, Jerry, you're not muted, so why don't you go ahead? And then
Sure. Yeah, I think, as always, Suzanne said it really well. And, I think fear is the biggest challenge, right? And so to be successful, you have to really have the failure is not an option mentality if you're going to go out and raise your own fund. I think Marilyn will probably talk more about the challenges being a first-time fundraising, so I'll leave that to her. I think some of the other challenges, that you need to think about is the amount of time and, frankly, money it's going to take to raise your own fund. You're writing checks, not receiving them. Particularly first-time funds, it can take a couple of years in total, depending if you're a spin-out team or not. And the size of the fund, a lot of times first-time funds, or earlier funds are smaller, and that limits your audience because a lot of big pension funds and institutional investors want to write bigger checks but don't want to be more than 10% of your fund. So, coming to the market with a smaller fund, you just have to understand who your audience is, whether it's family offices, smaller institutions, fund of funds, et cetera. And those who will actually invest in an emerging manager, i.e. fund 1, 2, or 3.
And if you had been a man, do you think your challenges would have been the same, or was there anything particular to being a woman that you said, oh my goodness, this is very different than when I used to work for Allied or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think my comfort level of having a big institutional back, supporting what I was doing and, taking care of things while I went and did deals and built teams, and I was on the investment committee too. But, I think just like when you're looking at the next job and then up the ladder, guys tend to, if they're 50% or 80% qualified, will go for it and they'll figure out the rest. And women tend to, I hate to stereotype, tend to feel they need to be 100% qualified before they go there. It's the same thing with starting. As far as when are you going to go? Women are probably a little more fearful in that sense, right? Meaning they don't feel they're quite ready for it yet. You are. If I can do it, believe me, you can do it.
How about you, Marilyn?
So the biggest challenge I have found is fundraising. Just not really having the network out there, and just keep asking other people for help, or who could you refer me to, and just getting out there and just not being afraid of failure. There are a lot of LPs that I've known over the years, and you just keep hearing, this is my 6th SBIC fund, but it's the first as the two of us as managing partners together, even though over 20 years ago, I had funded Liddy's second company. And we keep hearing from people, we don't invest in first-time funds. And it's like, women are not going to be on their 3rd or 4th-time fund beside Jerry. But most women are not, or minorities are doing their 3rd or 4th-time fund. And so by saying you don't do a first-time fund, you're basically inherently cutting out a lot of women and minority managers. So you just gotta, I just feel like I gotta just keep plowing ahead, and we've been successful at having raising our fund, but it was extremely challenging and so at times frustrating. When COVID hit, we had a lot of investors lined up, and then people were like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do at this time. But my joke to my friends is, everyone is the same size on Zoom. I'm 5 feet tall. Nobody would know that on Zoom. And so we just persevered. So anyway, I want to encourage more women. I mean, I get together with women a lot, and a lot of times I just hear they feel undervalued. They don't feel appreciated by their firms. And go out and try and do it, because worst comes to worst, if you failed, you could always go back and get a job at a firm. But to have your own firm and to really create your own destiny and be able to prove that women can do it, it's really motivating. I mean, I'm working so much harder. I'm up till midnight every night, but it's for me, and I feel really excited and passionate about it.
We sort of touched on this, but I wanted to say, do you think there are any advantages of being a woman? And I'll tell you from my point of view, because I've been in business forever. In a group setting, it's very hard because the men are taller than you are. They talk over your head, and they talk about golf or sports or football, which I have no interest in and don't want to learn about. But if you are talking to a man one-on-one, I think being a woman is extraordinarily advantageous. So I'd be curious as to what you all think. Marilyn, you're still unmuted. Why don't you go first, and then we'll go around.
Okay, so I think being a woman sometimes can be extremely helpful in due diligence, because when you call up to get some, information about an industry or to talk about a deal that was done in the past, I feel like many of the guys don't feel intimidated by me and are willing to open up more. And I think most guys don't want to call another guy and be able to ask, like, hey, I'm looking at this deal, I need some help on it. So I feel like being a woman sometimes is very advantageous and just less threatening to a guy when you're trying to find out about a deal and what multiple they paid, and just try to use it to our advantage.
Okay. And let me unmute
I would say
Suzanne.
on the private equity side, meeting with management teams, especially when you have managers and founders who are selling and they're very nervous about private equity. I agree that it can be a little disarming to have a woman on the other side, and maybe they feel a little more comfortable. They're not trying to, rake them over the leaves. And I think that's actually, been a really big advantage and approach, because, dealing with lower middle market companies, for me, it's been always really enjoyable, but also I think you find really nice connections with the people who are selling. and then new partners, management teams, and partners. And then the other thing I would say is it's just you're different. You look a little different. You feel a little different, especially if you're in a big auction process. And I think being different can absolutely be an advantage. People remember you a little bit easier. I'm getting to the point where I think a lot more people recognize me than I recognize them. And it's not, I tend to remember all the women that I've met, but I don't necessarily remember all the men that I've met. And so I think that's always a positive as a differentiator.
Great. And then Jerry.
Sure. I think I definitely think, Suzanne, you might want to mute because I think it's
mute her.
Never mind. I think there's a couple of advantages to being a woman, probably way more than a couple, but a couple I'll mention. So one is that I think there's a lot more focus on diversity today than there ever has been. So if you're out there raising a fund, trying to raise a fund or thinking of raising a fund, there are so many more LPs who are very focused on investing and supporting women and minority-owned funds or women and minority focused funds. It's not where it needs to be, but it's a lot better than where it was, 10 plus years ago when I started my first fund. So there's ever since, a lot of the stuff that's been going on the last year or two has really brought a huge focus to diversity and inclusion and equity. And I think there's a lot of talk, there's some walk, but it's a start. And so I think, from my perspective, at least relative, there's never been a better time to be a woman if you're raising a fund. The other thing I think, which maybe we don't talk as much about, is culture. And I think being a woman, if you're starting a fund or being a partner, influential partner fund, you can bring a different perspective on culture. I mean, I think the culture at Avante is very different than the other firm I've been at or been, privy to. And I think we really have a different sense of purpose, different sense of inclusion. And I think that's more likely these days to come from women, not to say that guys can't do that as well, but I think women bring more to the table in that regard.
And for our last question or point, what, and Jerry, you've just touched on this, what progress have we seen? And specifically, can you talk about sort of where we are now versus 10 years ago? And you've already started that. Yeah. We can continue.
Yeah, the thing I would add, just to expand on that, is there are so many more support organizations now. 10 plus years, 12, 15 years ago, there wasn't very many women-focused organizations. And it was obviously hard to network with other women. There weren't the conferences there are now, et cetera. So now you have WAVE, you have PE Win, you have KO, you have the Women's Private Equity Summit, you have this conference. And so there's probably some I'm missing, but those are all designed to support and connect women at different levels depending on the organization. That is huge. That's just so great to see women helping women and sharing challenges, sharing issues, sharing opportunities. That's a huge difference to me.
Okay. And Marilyn, let me.
In general, I just want to say when I get a deal in, my first thought is, what woman can I bring this to partner with me on? And the first deal that we had, Jerry and I partnered together. And that's always my first thought is, what woman can I call, whether on equity or on the credit side, who can do this deal with me? And I think we need to do more of that, is try to work together, because that will just help us.
And finally, Suzanne.
Well, I just want to note 10 years ago, I think Jerry was it. So we're all kind of following in her footsteps. And, that's the biggest probably difference for me, looking around my career. I've just seen more women in leadership roles than I did early in my career. And it certainly inspired me to start my own firm. I hope that, everything that we're doing continues to perpetuate that. And to Jerry's point, I mean, what a blessing to have, conferences like this, all these women's affinity groups where we can actually do business together. And you don't have to choose, right? Like you can actually choose and seek out to work with other women on deals and bring in female bankers. And I think as we continue to perpetuate that, we're going to see more women in leadership roles in general. So I'm really encouraged by where we are in the industry right now, and all the effort that a lot of the groups like PE Win are making in supporting women starting their own firms.
Great. I think it's now time to turn to the question and answer part of this. And we have an interesting question, I think, great question, from Carson Christus, who asks us to talk about mentorship and in general, and how that has helped you in your journey, and whether a male or a female mentor makes a difference. And does anyone want to take that? Because you're all muted at this point. So Marilyn, is that you?
Yeah, I was going to say, seeing Jerry do this was very inspiring to me. And I think as more and more women launch their own firms, I think we want to be examples, and we want more younger women to do this. So having a Jerry ahead of me really has helped. So just want to thank you. And a lot of the mentors I have are men, but they're great sounding boards. But just being able to see more women launch their own firms is an example for others.
Suzanne?
I think most of us probably have our own personal boards or advisory boards. So not just one or two mentors, but several over our careers. And of course, we all grew, earlier in our careers. I actually never saw senior women until I was a senior woman. And that was within the Private Equity Women's Investor Network that where Jerry and I met, and Marilyn and I met. And I now have so many female mentors and advisors like Jerry, Adele Oliva, who started 1315 for me. And, I think we all, help each other, because it's all kind of new to, Marilyn's point. So I'm really fortunate, I think, to have so many today now female mentors that I never had before.
Okay. And Jerry, you want to comment on that question?
Sure. I think Suzanne made the same point I was going to make, which is it's really good to get your own personal advisory board. And that's, people who are really trusted people who will tell you what you need to hear, not just what you want to hear. Because whether you're launching a firm or thinking about the next job or the next deal, you want someone to tell you the truth. Are you ready? What do you need to do? Where are the deficiencies? Where are the things where are your strengths that you can sell, so to speak? What do you have to offer? So, you want that advisory board that will tell you the truth, as well as make connections. It's still about networking. So.
We have a question from Eva Davis. She asks, what are some of the unexpected tough questions you were asked early on when forming your fund, and how would you recommend new first-time fund founders answer them? Who wants to take that? Jerry, you're still unmuted. Why don't you go?
Oh, man.
It's a great question.
Yeah. We were asked a lot to us, the toughest question was team risk, because we were not a team that was spun out of another. Typically what you've seen where the easier way, nothing's easy, is you're a group of people that spun out of a well-known firm, and so the LPs know you have your track record, et cetera. We came together, some of us had worked together a little bit, but by and large, we were not somebody that was spin out. So we had to address team risk. Why wouldn't we implode going forward? Mm-hmm. We had to talk about some of the relationships we did have, some of our common values, what we were each bringing to the table. There's no perfect answer, because at the end of the day, first time fund, there's going to be team risk, unless you're spin out. So we had to make them want us a lot in other ways to offset the team risk.
How about you, Marilyn?
I think that one of the hardest things for women in general is just building a track record. And SBA has been trying for a long time to get more women managers into the program. And you have to have top quartile performance and your own track record. And that is very challenging when you're at a big firm. So if you have the opportunity, which I had, to be able to be on a bigger platform, but launch your own fund, you at least can build a track record and be able to take that with you, because that was the key. As everybody asked, I need to see your track record. And that's really key. If you could build it somewhere and be able to have an established top quartile track record. And even then, I bet, I felt like here I was the top performing fund at my last firm by more than double, and I was still worried about launching on my own. So you just got to be able to take that step and just build that track record and take it with you.
Okay, and then Suzanne.
I think there's a lot of tough questions that get asked during due diligence, rightfully so, because you're asking people for millions and sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. And so they're gonna go deep, just like we would go deep on a management team and a potential portfolio acquisition. And so I would just say be prepared for anything. I've had a lot of personal questions asked of me that I was surprised about, but understand why people would ask those questions. And so, and then there's all the technical questions that Marilyn and Jerry mentioned. And we were also, I should just note, we were also a first-time team. So I was not a spin-out from a larger firm, and we had to get creative. So, we didn't go out into the institutional market right away. We did a few deals with our own partner capital. Then we raised capital from high net worth individuals and family offices, and then continue to send deals to the institutional market, as we're going out to raise our next fund. So I think there are different paths than just going straight to the institutional market. And the nice thing is, for those of you who are in private equity specifically, the independent sponsor market, there's more demand for independent sponsor deals, even from the larger funds. And so you can build your track records without having to go out and raise a 100 million plus fund right out of the gate. But you do need capital to be able to do that. So that's also a challenge, but I think something you can overcome with the right deal. Have a good deal.
Yeah. If I can comment on that, every time I speak at any panel, about 10 men will come up to me and say, I'm starting a pledge fund. I don't have any capital. I don't care. I'm taking the risk. I'm going, and show me your little deals that nobody else wants to do. I'll do them. I never am approached by a woman. So I just want to leave you ladies with it. You don't have to start up with a fund. You can start with, in your garage, in your living room, in your bedroom with no money, and cobble it together. So many men do that, and then they go on and raise a fund. And I would just encourage all of you, you're smart and you're well-educated and you're competent and, you're ready. So
if you have a good deal,
you're starting a fund.
I will help you fund it.
And you've got everybody here. I think we're out of time. Yeah. But I want to thank you all, and I'm so impressed by all of you. Happy you are where you are. It's a great day for women.
Thank you.